good evening, all the respected delegates. After a brainstorming session about diabetes and cardiovascular risk, we have yet another important topic. And we have seen that there has been a lot of new drugs in diabetes like SGLT2 inhibitors, the DPP4 inhibitors, etc. But still, all of us would have experienced a situation in our clinic when we're seeing a patient who is on sulfonylurea for a long time, and we still think twice while changing the drug for another reason. And do sulfonylureas have an edge still? To talk on this, we have an eminent speaker, Dr. Aravind Gupta, who is the Director and Consultant Physician, Jaipur Diabetic Research Center. He is a fellowship of American College of Endocrinology. He is a member of many American College of Physicians, and he's a reviewer for JAPI. He had presented various papers. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello. Thank you, ma'am, for my kind presentation, kind introduction. And at the outset, I thank Dr. Jyoti for excellent hospitality and excellent conference. And really thanks for inviting me to present some of the science regarding the old poor man's anti-diabetic drug, that is sulfonylureas. This is my disclosures because I'll be presenting some of the data. So let us see the ladder of diabetes management. We all start with the lifestyle management, go for monotherapy, combinations, insulin plus, insulin only. There are certain guidelines, and what the guidelines suggest, we have all hearing for last 2 days. Since yesterday, everybody is talking about this thing, and we all know about the sulfonylurea after metformin and diet and lifestyle modification. What is the next? This is the first thing. Every guideline in the world, whether the ACE guidelines or whether the ADA guidelines or WHO guidelines, IDF guidelines, any guidelines, they suggest that after metformin, sulfonylureas are the second line drug of choice. Even IDF guidelines, which is a global guidelines used for some of the poorest countries of the world, they also suggest that after the lifestyle management, you just consider sulfonylureas as a second line. This is the recent guidelines for the sulfonylureas. What is the science behind? We all know insulin resistance initiates the event in type 2 diabetes. There is a compensatory hyperinsulinemia and insulin resistance initially, and there is a postprandial hyperglycemia initially. But it is also true that clinically, diabetes develops only when some of the insulin deficiency, beta cell dysfunction is a must to develop the diabetes. That is very, very important thing. So it is true that insulin sensitizers can very well control the diabetes, at least initially, but insulin secretagogues are almost always needed with time. You all know this is a real life situation. We are all practicing clinicians, and we know that sulfonylureas are the drug of choice initially to control the diabetes. It's because we all know that insulin deficiency is very, very important and significant in diagnosis. We have seen this slide for last 2 days that the 50% of beta cells are lost before the diagnosis. So only this is the insulin deficiency, but this is more than that. Even the recent studies suggest that even actually the 80% of beta cells are lost. So we have still the insulin deficiency is there. And what is the mechanism of sulfonylureas? We all know for decades that there are activations of sulfonylurea receptors in the beta cells membrane. They inhibit the ATP sensitive potassium channels. That's why there is a depolarization, and there is a calcium entry into the thing, and then they stimulate the PI granules, and ultimately there is insulin secretion from the exocytosis. What happens is that there are different types of sulfonylureas receptors on the beta cells. There are different kilodalton sulfonylurea receptors. So you cannot generalize the older sulfonylureas to the newer sulfonylureas. This is one of the, like glycoside. which has a different sulfonylureas action, and this is very important, EPEC2. EPEC2 is important for conversion from sulfonylurea receptor, and this is responsible for insulin secretion. So this sulfonylureas, especially the EPEC2 is very, very important, and glyclazide does not activate the EPEC2. That's why this does not cause so much of beta cell exhaustion. So we have got sulfonylureas in almost all the landmark trials in the world, including UKPDS, TAIL Navigator, and all the newer studies. Let me give you the little glimpse of the generations of the sulfonylureas, how they developed. The first generation sulfonylureas, we all know they are now not available. The second generation sulfonylureas, glibenclamide, glipizide, glyburide, and this glyclazide, they are already there, but there is a third generation sulfonylureas, very, very improved actions of sulfonylureas, including the glimepiride, the glyclazide modifies release, glipizide gastroenterologist therapeutic GIT system. This is now newly developed, very soon it will be available, this much of newer sulfonylureas. This is known as third generation sulfonylureas. So what are the concerns? We all are concerns in the India, especially the developing country like India. We are concerned with the cost. We are concerned with the efficacy of a molecule. We are concerned always with the hypoglycemia when the sulfonylureas is being used. Weight gain is always associated with sulfonylureas, the beta cell exhaustion, and the cardiovascular mortality. So these are some of the concerns, and we have to evaluate each and every concern. Let me give you some of the evidences and science behind each and every concern of sulfonylurea use. Let us see the beta cell exhaustion. I'll give you certain newer things. We all know about this beta cell, that there are around 10,000 granules are present in the PI granules in the beta cells. And what happens actually, it is the glucotoxicity and inflammatory cytokines and the reactive oxygen species which actually leads to amyloid deposition, causes lipotoxicity, and causes beta cell apoptosis or beta cell exhaustion. What is more important that this is more important. There is initially that this beta cell exhaustion is reversible. How it is that? It is a physical depletion of beta cell insulin stores secondary to prolonged chronic stimulation with glucose or non-glucose. So initially, whenever you this is prolonged sort of a exhaustion, the beta cell insulin stores, there is no defect initially with the insulin synthesis, and this can reverse. This beta cell exhaustion can be reversed. But if it is a very prolonged one and non-physiological and potentially irreversible beta cell caused by the chronic exposure of the supraphysiological glucose, that is a real glucotoxicity, causes the beta cell exhaustion, or that is sometimes it becomes irreversible. So this is one of the study, the animal studies I am presenting in front of you, where it is the effect of exenatide, the GLP-1 receptor agonist, sitagliptin or glimepiride. Let us see the different, what is that? Early type 2 diabetes, 6 months treatment with GLP-1 or DPP-4 inhibitor does not increase the functional beta cell mass relative to treatment with sulfonylureas in a perpetual rodent model. So what this suggests that it is not that important. The beta cell exhaustion initially is a reversible process. So there is another paper which says that this is the sulfonylurea tends to show some of the not only the beta cell exhaustion causes less but also anti-apoptotic action, and this is already published in Diabetes Care in last year, in 2014, and this clearly suggests that there is a remarkable increase in the functional beta cell mass with the sulfonylurea treatment. So consider the newer generation sulfonylureas, don't consider the older generation sulfonylureas which are a prolonged acting drugs. And this is data from the UKPDS, and really it is not that type of hype which is created with the sulfonylureas that this causes a myth. It is and not associated with beta cell exhaustion or apoptosis. Now let us see the efficacy. We all know that sulfonylurea is the most efficacious anti-diabetic or anti-hyperglycemic drugs, and there is no debate into that. that it reduces the glycosylated hemoglobin by 1 to 2.2 to 2.5%. This much of magnitude of glycosylated hemoglobin reduction is there with the sulfonylureas. And if you see there, as a monotherapy, this reduction is there, and overall reduction is to the tune of 1.15 depending on the different types of sulfonylureas. And if it is added with metformin or any other drug with the sulfonylureas, the reduction is much more as compared to monotherapy. So this is the efficacy, and I think nobody can doubt about the efficacy of a sulfonylurea drug. Let us see the hypoglycemia. Risk of hypoglycemia, yes, there are certain situations in a patient, like the older patients, patients treated with the polypharmacy, concomitant use of insulins and sulfonylureas, and the long-acting sulfonylureas, earlier ones, they cause most hypoglycemia. Risk of hypoglycemia is again more important when the patient is having renal insufficiency or the hepatic impairment. Yes, it is agreed, but let us see some of the science, the evidences with the glimepiride. It causes less risk of hypoglycemia as compared to glibenclamide. And clearly here says that if you compare with the older glibenclamide, glimepiride causes less hypoglycemia. And this is clearly here, the hypoglycemia is 5.6 and 0.86 here. So glimepiride actually causes less hypoglycemia, and the evidences are already published in Diabetologia in 2003. And let us see with the newer study, in the advanced study, which says that all these studies were the Accord, UKPDS, and this advanced study that gliclazide causes the least hypoglycemia. And if you compare with the sitagliptin, gliclazide and the other molecule, this is almost equivalent to a DPP-4 inhibitors. This is the data with the data with the advance. So sulfonylureas not lowers the blood glucose, and please giving much a problem, so we need to be cautious and careful in dosing. That is very important. Please don't go more than an optimal dose which is needed in a patient. So suppose you are giving glimepiride 1 milligram, 2 milligram, don't jump over 3 milligram, 4 milligram or 6 milligrams. There is no advantage over this. So please give the lower doses or optimal doses of the sulfonylureas, whether it is a gliclazide or a glimepiride. And if we see here clearly that glycemic control is very, very long there with the advanced study, and even in advance on, we have seen the follow-up of this patient, which causes the less, even in renal disease, the gliclazide is being used up till end-stage renal disease, and they found there is nothing much more harm even if the gliclazide is given. Of course, in renal insufficiency, glipizide is the drug of choice as far as the guidelines are concerned. So when insulin is used, we all know that we never blame the insulin for hypoglycemia. So what about the sulfonylureas? So this is one of the important thing where the meta-analysis was done, and it is published here in the International Journal of Clinical Practice, that there is hypoglycemia is not that very much there with the optimal doses of the sulfonylureas. Let us see the weight gain, and the weight gain is with the disease or with the drugs. Most of the patients of type 2 diabetes are overweight, we all know about it, and the drugs causes weight gain is sulfonylureas, thiazolidine dienes and insulin. So let us see the weight gain with this glimepiride, and there is an intra-individual weight gain. The change is not that much, very, very significant thing. So, and some of the drugs causes a weight neutral effect even with the sulfonylureas, the newer ones I am talking of. And the weight gain with the sulfonylurea as compared to DPP-4 inhibitor is not that much. It is 1.6% as compared to the basal weight observed for 52 weeks treatment with the glimepiride. So this is with the weight gain. Let us see this cardiovascular safety of the sulfonylureas. Initially there was much concern in the UGDP studies about the concern that sulfonylurea causes really heart, the myocardial infarction, and they are not safe as far as cardiovascular things are concerned. 1998 UKPDS says that intensified therapy was associated with reduced microvascular complications compared with the conventional therapy. In the UKPDS, the sulfonylureas were used for so many years and they never found it to be associated with too much of cardiovascular toxicity or the safety. And this is one of the published paper which is published in Diabetes Care in 2010, where conclusion is no increased mortality risk among the individual sulfonylureas, but results suggested glimepiride is preferred sulfonylurea in the underlying coronary artery disease. And this is one of the paper where compared the other sulfonylureas, glimepiride is found to be safe as far as the cardiovascular things are concerned. Again, I am insisting on the doses of the sulfonylureas. This is one of the important things what is known as ischemic preconditioning. All the gliptins, they say that sulfonylurea increases the ischemic preconditioning. And what is ischemic preconditioning is very, very important. Normally in the patients, the sulfonylureas actually, other than the glimepiride and gliclazide, abolish the ischemic preconditioning in the patient. And this is what is that there is sulfonylurea receptor on the myocytes, and ultimately these actually potassium channels are closed, and there is again calcium channel entry, and they increases stimulate the mitochondrial or sarcolemmal ATP, and ultimately leads to this type of impaired cardiovascular impaired. And this is the few last slides. The gliclazide is having different sulfonylurea receptors at the initially I told you about that thing. So there is a gliclazide XR is really promoting the closure of channel and opposing the ischemic preconditioning. So don't bother about some of the ischemic preconditions with the newer generation of sulfonylureas. This is the glimepiride comparison with the glibenclamide. Yes, older generation can increase the ischemic preconditioning, but not the newer ones. Little bit about the other actions of sulfonylureas, and this is again published in 2003, where the macrovascular markers are being affected by the sulfonylureas, adiponectin, MCR, TNF-alpha, and some of the other inflammatory cytokines. And the anti-aggregatory effect, there is more that glimepiride is considered to be the safer, gliclazide, glycagon, and glibenclamide. So these both the drugs, glimepiride and gliclazide, can have the anti-aggregatory effects, and the JAK and the other say that there are certain extra pancreatic action of the sulfonylureas, and these are very, very important extra pancreatic actions, and they may be having anti-inflammatory property, angiogenic property, and antioxidative property. And there are certain newer publications, just very new in the last few years. So glimepiride, there is a improvement in the metabolic parameters, their cardiovascular safeties, and one of the important see here is the reduction of even arrhythmias. So all sulfonylureas are not safe, the same, and you have to actually ultimately consider the newer generations of sulfonylureas, and we continue to generalize about which is not right. Older generation sulfonylureas not good, newer generation sulfonylureas can be considered. And again the last time it is I told you that poor man's anti-diabetic drugs. Most of the people do not afford even the gliptins and the newer SGLT2 inhibitors. We have to give sulfonylureas to those people, and metformin. These are the cheaper drugs, and the cost should be considered whenever the patient is there and who cannot afford. So the results are there with the thing, it is a second line therapy, and when the goal is to minimize the cost, you have to consider the sulfonylureas. So sulfonylureas are having the beta cell specific, the preserves the myocardial preconditioning, action on both phases of insulin secretion, rapid and longer duration of action is there, decrease insulinemia, the extra pancreatic effect, increase adiponectinemia, lesser risk of atherosclerosis, and the control of glycemia beautifully by sulfonylureas. So they are safe and smart to use, and the practice points are here. the place of sulfonylurea in the current diabetes management is definitely there. You cannot write off the sulfonylureas in the management of type 2 diabetes. Concerns with the sulfonylurea, yes, there are concerns I have given you, so you have to consider the individual patient while giving the sulfonylureas, and then seeing the other evidences, you have to translate these evidences into the clinical practice. Clinical medicine is a calculated risk. A doctor makes the calculation and the patient takes the risk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that wonderful, nice and crispy presentation. The time is yet to be over. We can have a few questions.
You compared glycoside with the DPP-4 inhibitors in terms of hypoglycemia. But I would like to know which glycoside was used in the study. Is it instant release or modified release?
It was used a modified release.
Modified release.
So that's why actually I told you in my presentation that whenever you consider the sulfonylureas, these are newer generation sulfonylurea. I told you about the GITS glipizide. It will be coming. It will be much safer drug and much cheaper drug. So I think in the Indian conditions for our own people, the sulfonylureas can be used, but I am again insisting every time in my presentation that dose should be optimal. Dose should not exceed what is required, and you should not go the maximal dose of the sulfonylureas. So maximum tolerated dose should not be given. It should be optimal. Like gliclazide, you can give up to 60 milligrams modified release or 80 milligrams of total dose of gliclazide, or 2 to 4 milligram at least for the glimepiride, especially in the renal patients. There are studies. Glipizide is as far as guidelines are concerned, but recent studies suggest that gliclazide modified release can be given up till end-stage renal disease. I have presented that study, and there are studies available. There are published studies.
Have we, hello?
So this is not, yeah.
Have you forgotten the idea of insulin resistance? I thought that is the most important pathophysiological factor in diabetes. How is it that we forget about insulin resistance all on a sudden because glimepiride has come back? Is it not important to give drugs which act on insulin resistance? We are all fond of quoting ominous octet from different, but we forget that the recommendation from different.
Yeah, I think, yes, you are right. There are certain like ominous octet, which is not a single pathopathology. Diabetes is a multifactorial disease. So you cannot generalize with simple beta cell function and insulin resistance. You have to consider the alpha cell, the glucagon, the brain, the kidney, the liver, muscles, and probably the most of the factors are responsible for hyperglycemia. So that's why I am telling you that you have to consider the insulin resistance on one side and then insulin deficiency on other side. You cannot give always the insulin in those type of patients. You have to consider initially the sulfonylureas with combination with anything. You can combine with DPP-4 inhibitors, you can combine with, of course, metformin is the drug of choice, and you can combine the third drug of your choice, seeing the individualized things.
So what about glycemic variability and sulfonylureas?
Yes, this is very, very important. This is very coming problem. It is coming, the glycemic variability. I think yesterday some person have showed beautifully the glycemic variability reduced with the DPP-4 inhibitors, but the studies are not there with the sulfonylureas, so I cannot comment on glycemic variability. If anybody of you knows, Jyoti, if you know about the glycemic variability with the sulfonylureas, I don't know, but DPP-4 inhibitors and other drugs are known to reduce the glycemic variability very much. It is high with sulfonylurea. Yeah, that's it. So this is one of the point to consider. That's why not always, it should not be generalized to give the sulfonylureas, but you cannot write off. That's it.
There are no further questions. We shall conclude the session. Thank you, sir, for that wonderful presentation.